A bold presentation and an even bolder livery have marked the launch of a full-scale mock-up of Formula One's new era of car coming into force in 2022. But was there actually anything new? Or did F1's showmanship in the Liberty Media age just drum up something to get overexcited about? In truth, there was a bit of embellishment about this unveiling, and we'll get into why. But we'll also explain what was informative about this launch, because it wasn't just all style and no substance. In fact, all style and no substance is exactly what F1's trying to avoid with this rules overhaul. So let's have a look at what's changing to achieve that, how much of that is on display with this unveiling, and what the point was of this whole online extravaganza. At a curiously titled F1 1 Begins presentation at Silverstone, F1 unveiled a life-size model that represents the start of its bold new era of cheaper cars and better racing. We should point out that this doesn't actually mean any F1 car next year will look exactly like this. This isn't F1's attempt at replicating IndyCar or Formula E's route by adopting a single-make chassis. It's been more than 18 months since the new rules were first publicly unveiled, when we saw a wind tunnel model and plenty of renders. Some images of this car show a few subtle differences, and we'll get onto that shortly. But ultimately, this is nothing we've not really seen before. It's not a prescriptive design that everyone will adopt next year, and it's for a season that won't start for several more months. But that new bonkers livery was new and definitely split opinion, and probably didn't do the shape of the car justice. So you might be looking at this thinking, what's the point? Why bother? Isn't it a lot of effort for nothing very substantial? It's worth remembering that F1's next generation car was meant to be introduced this year, but that got delayed to 2022 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So F1's been relying primarily on a bunch of digitally created images with 2021 plastered all over them, and a few pictures of an unliveried wind tunnel model. F1's got a lot riding on the next generation of car, and it's very proud of the work that's gone into this. The bottom line is, F1's got something to hype, so why not hype it? Especially as there are now much better, much more real assets that can be used to build up to the 2022 season. This is F1 cashing in on some excitement in the short term, and also helping tell the story longer term as well. So even if it was kind of worthless in one sense, it was also a no-brainer. As we mentioned before, the new car rules were first publicly presented in late 2019, when the regulations were meant to come into force in 2021. So if you're feeling a sense of deja vu, you're not alone. This might well feel like something you've seen before, you just haven't seen a full-size real-life version of it. F1's new model appears almost identical to the original renders from 2019, with the exception of small details such as the positioning of the wing mirrors, the style of the wheel rim covers, and the fin at the back of the engine cover. There were also some slight differences between the front wing and rear beam wing of the digital renders and the real thing, although it's impossible to know if this is because of a tweak in the design or some kind of production snafu. In any case, it doesn't really matter. All these images exist to do is to give an idea of what the cars might look like. It's a broad overview of the rule set and interpretation, just like the teams will be developing their own versions. Back when the rules were first published, F1 actually mocked up 3 different variants. The idea was to show that the new regulations aren't going to be too prescriptive, and there are still plenty of design freedoms. So what we've seen here isn't even the single ratified F1 idea of what a 2022 car will probably look like. It's simply one version of what it could be. F1 is also happy for the teams to be coming up with designs that don't look like this. They've allowed a little more design freedom than initially intended, so long as teams don't do anything that contradicts the aims of the new rules. If that happens, the rules will be changed. So in fact, we probably learned a little more about the development process than we did anything revelatory about how the new rules might be interpreted. The collaborative effort between F1's in-house motorsport team and the FIA has been a cornerstone of how it has advertised the new rules. That continued with this launch, where F1 technical chief Pat Simmons revealed its intensity of simulation for the 2022 rule set resulted in 471 years worth of computing, powered by much more sophisticated CFD technology than the teams have. Let's have a recap then of what you need to know about next year's cars. The most obvious changes are visual, as F1's mock-ups consistently show the rule makers expect a very different style of car from 2022, and the real-world example is no different. But as we said earlier, this is intended to be substance, not just style. A simplified, highly prescriptive front wing and end plate should be far less sensitive to wake than the current designs, as will a ground effect floor that will ensure a greater proportion of the downforce is generated from the underbody. The floor change should also create a much cleaner wake, because the upwash of air is designed to be much higher, allowing it more time to dissipate its energy before falling upon the car behind. Other changes to achieve this include outlawing barge boards, standardised flush wheel covers, front wheel deflectors, and limits upon brake duct shaping. F1 is confident about what this will achieve, with simulations showing the following car retains 86% of its downforce while one car length behind another, compared to 55% for the current cars. Other important changes to the car itself are the suspension and wheels, primarily with the switch to 18-inch rims and low-profile Pirelli tyres. The intention is for these to be less temperature sensitive and allow the drivers to push hard throughout stints, while still having a performance drop-off to make strategy interesting. Much like the drivers would probably tell you in private, we'll believe that when we see it. As for the suspension, how it's attached to the wheels has been simplified, with the extended mounting points pioneered by Mercedes and Toro Rosso now outlawed. Hydraulic suspension is also outlawed, meaning only the springs and dampers can control the stiffness. There are other important changes under the skin as well in the interest of safety, which are behind the car's minimum weight rising to 790 kilograms, which is 38 kilograms more than this year. The nose can now absorb 50% more energy in an impact, and the side of the car is about twice as strong in a lateral impact. Improvements have been made to the headrest and the fuel tank, and from next year it should be harder for parts to brake in a way that scatters debris across the track. These are undeniably important advances, but of course when any kind of car is revealed, it's the visual stuff that matters more. So what are your thoughts on F1's real-life mock-up? Are you a fan of the next generation, and does this help excite you for 2022 and beyond? Have your say in the comments and pass judgment on that striking livery as well. If you enjoyed the video, please leave us with a thumbs up, and if you're new here, then how about hitting the subscribe button to make sure you can join us again in the future.